Welcome back to another episode of MedTech Trends. I'm your host, Dorian. So today we're joined by Eugene Borukhovich. So we'll do a little bit of intro and then we'll get right into the topic of today's conversation, which is about a company that he started, him and his wife, Marina, I believe. And so we'll get into a lot more about what the company does and how that's going to roll out over the next couple of years and months. So Eugene is a serial and entrepreneur. He's an executive, a venture builder, speaker, and board advisor, and his focus is currently in digital health. He's also the chairman and founding board member of YourCoach.Health and founder of Initium Impact Ventures. Prior to YourCoach, Eugene served as global head of digital health at Bayer. He's also co-founded and sold a doctor rating company and a consulting company. And he also hosts a podcast called Digital Therapeutics Podcast, I believe. The website where you can find it is Digital Health Today, and I'll post a link in the description below. So thanks so much for joining us, Eugene. Really, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for the invite. And there was definitely no fake news there, aside from the fact I didn't start the company, Marina did. And I just went on for the ride a little over a year ago. So that's the only thing to correct. But
Gotcha.
glad to be here.
Beautiful. Okay, so bringing on a lot of expertise. I know you have a very diverse career and background. There's a lot of cool stuff that you bring into the team. So, and by the way, I should mention that it's a really cool pairing. I don't know how many people are successful when it comes to husband and wife pairing up, or let's say best friends, that sort of thing. Typically, it doesn't work out too successfully, but I think you guys are on a really cool path, and we'll get into that in the show.
Sounds good.
So now the mission of YourCoach.Health. It's for every person on the planet to have a squad of health and wellness coaches. And it is essentially a practice management platform. So the approach that you guys have taken, I believe, if I understood correctly when I was doing my homework on this, is that it's a platform for essentially any coach, any type of coach, health and wellness, and a little bit beyond, to get on and to use this. So essentially, they don't have to build their own apps, and they can bring on their own clients, and that might include grandfathering clients in. And there's a suite of tools that you guys have also built out. So it's essentially all set up for coaches to just come on board and start their practices. Really cool setup. I think this is one of the things that I found really interesting about this is that it's actually not purely focused on health and wellness. To me, it's much broader. You can have business coaches, life coaches, career coaches. All these folks can come on the platform. Was that part of the vision?
Yeah, so maybe I'll back up why it was started. And to answer your question shortly, we are focused on health and wellness coaches. Interestingly enough, some investors were coming to us and saying, you can have a life coach and business coach and exec coach and et cetera. Absolutely. And I think, again, we're not limiting to what kind of coaches, and I'll talk more about our sort of validation verification processes, but we're not limiting who can come. We are a health and wellness coaching platform, and very much focused on that. And we'll, I'm sure, get into kind of what that really means. But I do want to back up on why this was started. And, we already talked about Marina very briefly, but Marina, while we were living in Netherlands, went through breast cancer. All is well. Part of that journey, she very quickly realized, while the docs did absolutely an amazing job, treating the cancer, they forgot about parts of her, body, mind, and soul, right? And so she was kind of hacking herself back to health more, mentally and physically, and realized what she was trying to do is sort of health coach herself, right? Or body hack. So she went on, got a health coaching certification, started having a few clients, and then, as she kind of says, I can't leave well enough alone, me, Eugene, saying, well, you need a platform, right? And so we approached Dan, who's our third partner in the business, who I had a startup with back in the day, to say, hey, how do we build this? Basically tools for Marina, right? So N=1. And so she went out building that, sort of empowering herself. And then we realized, well, her mission was, how do I help people, right? And sort of apply health coaching through health consumers and individuals' journey. And so YourCoach was born. She basically stopped practicing, and now we have 1,000+ coaches registered on the platform and practicing, and it's been an amazing journey. So I wanted to back off on sort of what how it got started.
Gotcha. I know, really appreciate that too. So because the backstory here is, I think, really, really important. And so Maria, like you said, she would have gotten certified for this, and this is definitely a point that I wanted to touch on. Is what sort of coaches do you look for, or maybe not necessarily look for, but what kind of coaches typically just join on the
Yeah.
platform? And when the focus is on health and wellness, is there a framework, let's say, for taking care of all the different points, like you mentioned, of care, around care, that are typically outside of the normal healthcare system, right? Dealing with all the emotional, the social stuff, getting support outside of a hospital setting, so in the community, the follow-ups, all these sorts of things. Typically, something that there's a lot of attention on it, just not enough solutions built around it. So, is there a framework on sort of
So
structuring all these coaches?
yeah, so maybe a few things on the industry itself. It's been around for, let's say, 20 years, right? And I don't like using the term legitimized, but it's still a bit of a wild, wild west, right? However, comes on the scene the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches, which is working with the AMA. And in 2019, or end of 2019, just when we're sort of officially registering YourCoach.Health in January of 2020, we that partnership between the national board and the AMA actually released some test codes for CPD. National board has a certification that you as a coach need to go through. And this is basically, at this point, is kind of connecting the health and wellness world with the healthcare world, right? And National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching is very much responsible for driving that connectivity. Now, on back to a little bit your question on the platform, there are individuals that quote unquote hack their bodies, whether they lost weight, whether they sort of hack their neurological responses to certain things, and there's body hackers, etc. And once you achieve the goals, you want to teach others, right? And so we're actually not limiting who can join the platform. What we are asking and requesting is that you do upload all the certifications, right? And I think ultimately, again, if you want to pair up with a physician, with a doctor in the healthcare system, you do need to be a national board certified coach, and you will need to be. And the reimbursement codes will, to today's knowledge, will be accessible only to the national board certified. So.
Okay. All right, a couple things that you mentioned, I definitely wanted to follow up on. So, like, there's the reimbursement part of it. There's the I don't know if it's a regulatory body, but it's like you mentioned, the AMA. So, do they have position statements or guidance statements, guidelines, that sort of thing, that incorporate this more holistic picture of health and wellness beyond just acute care or treatments for particular medical conditions? That has that been recently established?
Yeah. So again, I don't want to put AMA's language into my words. I would urge people to just check it out. But in sort of my translation of it and my words of it, is that, again, at around the same time, end of 2019, the AMA basically said that a health coach, a certified national board certified health coach, is a non-clinical member of the healthcare team. That's basically given a big nod to this profession. From a reimbursement perspective, I want to make it clear it's not reimbursable today. So most of this health and wellness coaching is done on cash basis. So most of these coaches do have their own clients that are paying for this. There are some employers that are reimbursing for this, more of again, as a perk, as a bonus. However, I do believe that with those CPT level 3 codes, and those level 3 codes are being tested out in, I'll say, the wild. Started out with Veteran Affairs, right? Inside that, there's data being collected on the benefits of it. There's been numerous clinical trials done on the benefits of health and wellness coaching surround different therapeutic areas. I mean, you can just go to clinicaltrials.gov and just type in health coaching. You'll see hundreds of those clinical trials. So again, it's coming to age. the industry, and we do have actually a report on our website that, you know, as a young startup, we were discovering the space ourselves further. So this was our first attempt to do a sort of broad strokes of health and wellness coaching, what it means, you know, what are the parties, how it is. So on YourCoach.Health website, we have a link to our health coaching report that you can download as well.
Beautiful. All right, I will definitely take a look at that report. All the stuff that you mentioned, you know, I'm learning as we're going here too, because I didn't realize that you could just go on clinical trials and actually look at a clinical trial setup type studies. So these are like rigorous industry standard type studies, looking at you know, coaching, health and wellness coaching versus whatever the other arm is. Really interesting stuff. It's actually, so this is like when we're now getting into, you know, rigorous evidence backed place for health and wellness coaching, whereas before it was very much, it was on the radar, but it was on the radar in the sense that people were aware of it, and then if you really bought into it, or if you knew somebody who was definitely an expert, you would go and you would seek that help. But it wasn't as mainstream as now it's becoming.
Yep.
Really interesting.
Yeah. So the short answer is yes, absolutely. A little bit of the longer answer is, you know, and, you know, since we're sort of in the front lines of that industry, we are seeing that the word and the profession of health coaches, or those words together, there's a lot of misunderstanding on what it is and what it's not, right? Again, I've actually, you know, as a COO in the startup, I've never gone through coaching. I actually went through a 9-week intense program with Well Coaches, which is one of a few schools that are certified by the national board. I'm not a national board certified coach. I have no intent to practice. But what I took out of that 9 weeks is, you know, a health and wellness trained coach is a non-clinical psychotherapist. It's, you know, it is a lot of listening. It is motivational techniques, right? It is, you know, reflections and driving people to reflect on their statements. It is understanding your wellness vision and the goals and setting them and helping you achieve it. And the way we sort of describe it is, you know, a health and wellness coach is not necessarily a doctor, right? But a doctor can actually go get their national board certified, quote unquote, degree. It's not a certification, not a degree. You know, a health and wellness coach is not necessarily a nurse, but we are finding many nurses are leaving the hospital work and profession behind because they can no longer seem to help people inside the healthcare system and taking it privately with a health and wellness coaching certification. Last one, and there's many more examples, but, you know, a health and wellness coach is not a nutritionist, but a nutritionist can also be a health and wellness coach. And same goes for fitness instructors, et cetera. So
Really, really cool. Wow. Okay. A little more familiar with the fitness space. I mean, way back, I tried getting my fitness certification, and then I realized that there's an entire other school of coaches. Even the word coaches, I think, probably needs to seep into our everyday language in a certain way, because now it actually has an important meaning, an important definition here, that you can actually get and hire a certified trainer or a coach to help with all these things. Really interesting stuff. And you know, so we mentioned a little bit about your background, is that you lived in Amsterdam, I think it was, right? Okay. So, and you also have a background in tech. You have a background in the entire entrepreneurship space. You're now serving as a board member, as an advisor in a number of organizations, and so you bring all these unique experiences into the role that you're in right now. You know, I wonder, from all the places and all the clients and all the companies that you've worked with, um, geographically, is it the same sort of sentiment, or is US sort of paving the way for this health coaching kind of movement?
yeah, so from a health coaching perspective, absolutely, and this is part of the reason. I mean, yes, we are Americans living abroad still, right? So we're based in Barcelona. YourCoach.Health is a U.S. business focused on U.S., and part of that, again, a lot of the tailwinds and driving. However, you know, we're, you know, constantly being reached out to by, you know, different associations around the world. And we know that, you know, the national board in US is, you know, already working with also many associations around the world, right? I think Absolutely. There's leading the way from, even the taxonomy code was just issued within the last month. So what does that really mean? That in quote unquote EMR, EHR system, you'll be able to pick a health and wellness certified coach as one of professions and a code at some point with a CPT code assigned, right? That's a huge, huge step forward. And that clinical validation and data is coming. It's very, therapy based, but actually the more holistic part, I think will also come forward very quickly. And again, focused, I think, with a lot of the, I'll say the mental health challenges. And again, I want to be clear, a health and wellness coach is not a psychotherapist, it's not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but all those can be a health and wellness coach certified. So.
Okay, gotcha.
Around the world, by the way, there's many people that are taking those certifications, the national board certification from around the world, right, as well.
Mm-hmm. And again, really, really interesting stuff. I'm learning so much from you. This is great. This also kind of makes me think that it's not straightforward to find this information sometimes. Like everybody knows about what clinics to go to. You can literally just Google it. You find listings of all these clinics. Everybody knows where to go and find a dietitian or a fitness trainer or something like that. These are more traditional kind of services. But finding a health coach, it just occurred to me that maybe there isn't a central place where you can go and do that. Find that type of person. And so what you guys are offering, again, you're framing it as a practice management platform. It's essentially anybody can go as a coach. You can use the platform to build out your practice. Really interesting stuff. And I think this is also part of the vision at YourCoach, is to build out this platform and be sort of the industry go-to for coaches.
So it's for coaches, and we're not quite there yet. Our goal was to become really a virtual home for the coaches and their clients. However, as you can imagine, and especially as 2020 brought so many things into focus, right? Overeating, in some cases, under eating, lack of sleep, lack of seeing things, and the list goes on.
Alcohol consumption.
Yeah, I mean, again, right? It's the list really, really goes on. We found that our platform as an app was being downloaded by end consumers as well, and so we have hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds requests that we, earlier on we were turning them away. Now, we're starting to actually try to match and help these individuals, on both sides. It's not, we're sort of playing with that as a young startup, as a young business, but we are going to be announcing a bit more sometime in May, so probably after this podcast airs.
Okay, great timing then. I'd love to have you come back on and give us an update on how things are rolling out too. But you did mention that there's a thousand people actually on the platform, 1,000 coaches, I believe it was. It's interesting you mentioned that the clientele essentially, so they were actually signing up on the platform as well, but there wasn't a home kind of built out for them just yet initially. And so now it's actually either as a client or customer or as a coach, both can sign up on the platform. And then do they get kind of paired up? Maybe we can dive into some of the mechanics of how the onboarding actually works.
Yeah, so I would rather actually hold that till May. So we're doing some small experiments now with that, to be frank.
Okay.
But we actually, just seen, we were asking very much, it was a kind of a rudimentary, where do you need the help, right? In your own words, and pick a category. And then part of that is, we're very much convinced that a health and wellness coach, works. It's all about relationships, right? And you want somebody who you can jive with to help you along that journey, right? And so that matching is not purely just because, and I hate comparing it to a driver, but just because you have a license, to drive, it doesn't mean that you're a good driver, right? And so, and also, to give you an example, there are coaches that work with you on intuitive eating, right? And by definition, that's intuitive and work you through it. But then there are coaches that want to see hardcore data, and that same thing goes for individuals, right? And so, there's so many parameters that we would need to to really match those individuals to the coaches based on their own challenges that they're going through and want to solve. So we're at the early stages of that, but that's, ultimately where we're heading as a business. And back to the mission that you started with, right? Enabling, every individual on this planet, powering them up by a squad of coaches. And I'll dive one step deeper into the squad word, right? Because, typically, and not to knock any of the models out there, I think everybody, if you ask them, well, I want to lose weight, at the core of it, well, not everybody, I don't want to speak for everyone, but, at the core of it, weight is, yeah, it's a measurement, it's a KPI, but there are challenges along the way, right? And so part of the squad concept is, it's a combination that you may have a head coach that is helping you through to set the goals and the vision, but they could be out of scope of practice because there are scope of practice on a lot of this. But again, I'll just pick, I'm a traveling busy executive and on the go, I may need a nutritionist to help me through this, right? And if that particular health and wellness coach is not also a licensed nutritionist per a certain state, they can start co-coaching and bring a coach into that squad. Next week, because of my jet lag and travel, I might be having some sleep issues, right? So why don't we bring in a sleep coach to help you through some of that for that week? Because we as individuals, we ebb and flow, right? And so we actually just starting to see this level of cooperation between coaches, which is amazing to see. That was a big hypothesis that Marina as a coach had, right? But we're starting to see that and the positive impacts on those individuals.
Gosh, okay. This is really interesting as someone that's coming from a data science background and having worked with a lot of real world evidence data sets and EMR data sets and clinical data sets and you name it. Really interesting to start to see these actual trends. And you mentioned this was it was a hypothesis uh, because again, I guess the initial vision was let's get a collection of different coaches. Everyone's certified. Everyone has a niche and a certain set of expertise, and they need to work together because as an individual, as a customer, as a client, my problems are not limited to very one like that. If that was the case, and that's basically going back to the old model of like that's just how medicine is practiced. You got a problem, very specific one. You go in, there's a certain code for it or two codes, and that's it. You follow it. But you're taking a very holistic approach to dealing with this. People are complex. They have multiple things that they need to deal with, and these are dynamics. These are changing over time as you're going through life, going through different periods. Pandemic is a major
Yep.
thing that a lot of people experience quite differently as well. Although there's some similarities. So this is a very interesting point. So the fact that you're starting to see these pairings, um, this is really interesting. Can we dive into that a little bit? How does that actually? How do you get that set up practically so that you make it accessible to people, to clients that are on the platform as well as to coaches? Because I imagine that you might need to pitch them a little bit differently on like, hey, by the way, if you got clients that also have this problem, maybe you want to pair up with this other coach who specializes in this.
So here's the piece about this. I think what we're and yes, it was a hypothesis, but at the same time this is real life, right? Meaning you as an individual, if you get a health and wellness coach and I'm going to step into, let's say, Marina's shoes for a second, and maybe some thyroid / hormone challenges, right? And you know what, maybe this happens for real. This is what happens with every individual out there. You're searching for help, and you are the one that's putting that a health and wellness team together. And I think coming from health tech yourself, the accountable care organization, we're looking at this as accountable wellness model, right? Because you as an individual are accountable, but then there's also quote unquote referral and people that you trust as a professional. You want to bring them into the loop to help that individual client. So it's literally, just practically speaking, I have a client, right? As a coach, my client has a specific challenge or an issue. I either bring my other, I don't know, a colleague from somewhere else that's focused on, again, sleep coaching or nutrition or thyroid or et cetera. And I bring them onto the platform as a co-coach. You combine, set the price together for this program that will help you uncover, your hormone levels and control them. And again, next week, that particular individual may be having a sleep challenge, right? And so what we're trying to look at now is, because how scalable is that model with individuals? And we are speaking to a number of companies, not prescribing, so we're not looking at prescription components, but health scribing. So again, think of this as, let's say music is medicine that has science backed, right? That can be health scribed into that toolbox into your program. So just to give you like an idea, but the journey is almost replicating what would happen in the real life, with health and wellness coaches as they work today. We're just taking it digitally and online and creating that community where they can actually share, exchange, and pair up.
Beautiful. Okay. This is very reminiscent to me of, I guess, the idea of care teams or coordinated care. I mean, these are ideas that go back decades and decades. But
Yep.
again, typically they're thought of in a clinical context, right? So there's if as a hypothetical patient, you go to the hospital, you take care of your diagnostic test, you get your diagnosis and so on. Eventually, you get sent home. Maybe there's follow up in a community setting, but it's very acute focus on very one particular condition. And so again, you're zooming out, you're taking this from a much more holistic perspective and looking at it as a person as a social being, with multiple issues. I mean, like there are, there's a care burden. So if you need coach to help caregivers to deal with the problem of an individual, this is something that you guys are offering. So it's really zooming out, really interesting stuff. I wonder if we can also take a look at the platform itself a little bit. Do you envision everything happening virtually through, Zoom like conference calls?
So look, and I don't want to compare this directly to the healthcare system and the interventions, but for at least your listeners, the familiarity is you go for your health check once a year to the doc, and if you get diagnosed, God forbid, with something, you go on more frequent basis, but you're still, most of your life is spent outside of the doctor's office. Traditionally, health and wellness coaching has been very localized to a geography. You actually meet with your health and wellness coach, right? I know when Marina was practicing, she would meet with her clients in person. Now, again, 2020 has changed quite a bit, right? And I do think to a certain extent, a good portion of that will stay. But remember, even if you meet face to face for that session, let's let's fast forward to the post-pandemic world, right? Those relationships and your time alone and with yourself and the triggers you have and how you're reaching those goals and how you're resetting that wellness vision, you're as an individual in your own head. And so, we are taking that relationship, back online through an end-to-end platform and the tools for both the coach to manage, all aspects of that, but also for client to see their own progress and check in with the coach. And again, that doesn't prevent the, face-to-face or physical meetings as things start opening up further, with masks included for now.
And hopefully we get there really soon. I know.
Yeah.
Okay, so would you consider this as I was reading the description on your website, is this a social platform? I was trying to draw a parallel with other platforms that a different space indeed, but like fitness platforms, the Fitbit app. I still use my Fitbit, but there are comparison tools that are used so you can track your progress relative to peers. You can engage with them, motivate each other, and so on. Is this going to be a social platform, or is this much more a one-on-one?
Yeah. So first of all, we do offer coaches to run individual programs, but also group programs, right? And group programs do work. I don't think there's as many. I'm actually not aware of any sort of studies back to the clinical world of groups. But that's a good point for me to take away. So we do offer the groups. We do believe that ultimately health and wellness coaching is this N equals one. Every single individual is unique and different, right? And everything of what you're going through that day to that hour to and so while motivation is needed in a social platform, we're not aiming to be a social platform and the challenges, et cetera, right? Because again, our focus is on that individual, right, on the other side, and how these coaches can be empowered to lead that individual, to their best version of themselves.
Okay, interesting. I also asked that question because I know that there are a few companies that have come out that essentially offer these online network type platforms as well. So you can actually go and you learn from your peers, engage from your peers. But even if it's a private type network, so very interesting sort of contrast to that. It's very much a care team, but a care team surrounding you as an N of one, and you engage with all these coaches as you need to. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
it's a health team. We
A
purposely stay
squad of
away
healthcare.
from from care part because our also a big part of that goal is as individuals are pre-chronic, and the reality is unfortunately I think majority of us as human beings will have some form of a chronic disease at some point in our time, especially as we live longer, right, as a society. So can we help the pre-chronic stay pre-chronic as long as we can, right? As a as a health and wellness coaching industry, and especially in the sort of science-backed and behavior-driven ways. We also know there's so many things that can be done to reverse metabolic diseases and things like that.
Hmm. Okay. And wanted to ask you also the way that the platform is getting rolled out right now. So I believe it's a free platform for you to get on as a coach, as a customer client. I wanted to ask you about that approach, the decision to take it that way versus other competing companies, brands that might be doing something completely different. And then also, how do you, for all intents and purposes, it's a business, it has to be generating revenue to be able to scale. How do you envision that happen? How does
Yeah.
your coach do that?
Yeah. So first of all, we launched sort of really officially. I mean, there was a bunch of the MVPs and things like that Marino was working on with the team. We sort of officially launched and registered YourCoach.Health in January of 2020, and then what happened, right? And so we were very lucky to have some amazing investors, and we also realized that while we actually at the time did not feel comfortable when the pandemic hit to call health coaches the new front lines of health, notice I don't say healthcare, when the pandemic hit, and the doctors and the nurses and the healthcare system was, kind of under tremendous pressure, and it still is in many countries, we actually felt very uncomfortable to calling health and wellness coaches the new front lines, right? But realizing that that level of support was needed, and so there was, health and wellness coaching were contributing their time to doctors and nurses, right? Helping each other. It's one of the warmest communities out there, and so we decided from the beginning when we sort of launched right in there was to continue having it free, as long as we can. Now, the reality, and I alluded to this earlier, we are going to start charging when we have our announcement sometime in May. We haven't nailed down the exact date just yet, but stay tuned. We will start charging coaches because, again, we are while we have a social impact as a key component, as a KPI to our business, we are a for-profit business. And so that will start happening sometime in May.
Gotcha. Okay. Makes perfect sense. And I envision it happening that way. It has to be sustainable in that way. And also, I mean, in all frankness, you're offering a really interesting service here. The platform itself is actually, like you said, end-to-end solution. There are a lot of different components here that there's the data management, client management, follow-up, all these different components are added to it. So, it's a great service. And I think a lot of people are using it right now. And I can imagine this growing quite a bit as well. I wanted to also touch on the again, going back to like how clients and coaches are actually onboarding here. And obviously, this is still in the health and wellness space. Um, Data privacy protection, anonymity, to the extent that that applies, always something important, top of mind to all these folks. How do you walk people through that when they're signing up? How do you help to ensure that private or personal health information remains private and personal? The platform, of course, is HIPAA compliant. Anybody can go on the website and
Yep.
actually see that on there. I wonder if you can walk us through that. So, any concerns? How would you address those?
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, you said it, first of all, we are HIPAA compliant, so we got a lot of these processes in place. Second of all, the core of this is a coach already has their client. They're just taking that relationship online, or potentially, and many coaches are moving it from another platform, right? And so, we're not getting in between of the coach client relationship. right? We're digitizing, we're helping coaches to digitize their programs, right? And those programs consist of everything from library tools, et cetera. Again, I don't want to list all the functions and features of it. People can go see it. But we're not getting in the way of that relationship between that coach and the client. Again, as we are exploring different models, and I alluded to that there are consumers that are also coming to it, we're actually working through exactly what you just discussed. So it is, like little things, for example, you can have a nickname that you can choose to show towards the coach and not your real name, right? So there's a number of steps that we're taking as we're getting ready to sort of turn up a lot of that, coming soon.
Very interesting stuff. Okay, and I know we're coming up on time really close. So I just wanted to try to squeeze in a couple of interesting points here. As I was reading up about the company, this thing is going to scale for sure, and it's going to scale across countries because you guys are rolling it out across multiple countries. As a coach, you can sign up regardless of where you are in the world. There's going to be a lot of activity going through the platform and a lot of opportunity to actually gather information that can be used to tailor programs, improve outcomes, that sort of thing. And I wonder if you can speak to that a little bit. Do you guys have a data strategy? Is this part of the vision for improving services to individual people
Yeah.
and outcomes as well?
Yeah. So, I'll probably talk, and again, some more of that will be coming out in May. The one thing I do want to say, all of this, we're not selling the data. We're, for even ourselves, it's at de-identified level completely, and hence, the HIPAA compliance. Of course, number one, our quote unquote number one customer is the coach. We want to make their experience their home. And so part of that, what we're rolling out is how do we help them improve their own practice, right? And so a lot of that will be coming over the next months as well. Secondly, we are looking at a number of things, again, at a de-identified more population level, right? Of what is the impact of those health and wellness coaching at a population level, even though what I've been saying earlier, everything is N equals one, but how do we abstract it to a population and what's the work? And, while we haven't approached whether it's the national board or the AMA or anybody in that sense of, can we partner up in that, because again, the traditional health and care world, uh, and I don't want to call it versus anymore. It's really how do we tie that together to the health and wellness world. And you notice I'm not trying to, sort of go around it. I'm waiting until we're sort of ready a little bit more. But as you can imagine, I think a lot of this is just fascinating to watch and grow and bring outcomes ultimately to all of us, the individuals. And, our goal is, that all of us can really become or stay, healthy and happy humans.
Which of course an ideal for everybody, and I hope this platform really helps folks to do that as well. And Eugene, I know. So again, we're kind of coming up close on time here. I'd love to pick your brain a little bit though, because you're also coming from a pharma background, and on your podcast as well, you've had folks come on. Again, your focus is on digital therapeutics, prescription digital therapeutics. There's a huge potential for these types of therapies out there. I also see a bit of a connection here. So there's potential to do some kind of project, some synergies between your coach and digital therapeutics. I wonder if you can speak to that a little bit.
Yep.
How do you imagine the two kind of working hand in hand?
Yeah. So first, I'll peel the onion. Your first question on the pharma and coming from the pharma world, I honestly loved every nanosecond of being inside a pharma company. While, I joke around that I lost most of my hair in that 3.5 years. And for me, one of the biggest things, and that's I think a little bit of the challenge of the industry, is obviously there are products that are pills, there are boxes that treat, and for very much, I always say, right, the pharma industry, while in many cases it has a very negative connotation, been extending and saving people's lives for decades, right, now. So, but one of the biggest, I'll say, pet peeves of mine was, again, just because I'd taken a pill for, and I'm making this up, but for my type to diabetes, right? But I may also have a comorbidity to a few other diseases, right? And those are from potentially different pharma company. And so I understand that the incentives are not there, right? But, how do you help an individual back to this holistic approach, right? And so, that was a big of the aha moment while I knew it, being inside of it and sort of going through some of those challenges. And when Marina was, building that MVP while I was still there, to me, it was like the light bulb went off that it was time to move on and join her in this journey to build, again, how do we, prevent and how do we help individuals to become their best version of themselves? So that's kind of the, now back to the second part of your question on the DTX. So, for full transparency here, some of the digital therapeutic companies we were also looking to work with, because many digital therapeutic companies surrounding themselves with health coaches and actually hiring health coaches. And so we were approached on the inbound and actually sort of started pursuing that model initially of, we kind of called it internally health coach on demand, where, it's a bit of this matching and, but we pursued it for a few months, and then we very much woke up, Marina and I, and, Marina first on one topic, but sub to that, we walked away from that model. And as a young startup business with, pretty good margin and potential revenue for this kind of a model, it was a tough decision to bring back to the board, to walk away. Our goal was not to become a recruiter for those companies. So the reason I'm saying all that in the background is we also see, and I sort of alluded to this earlier, that, while human beings are a key component of your health and wellness journey, and Marina always says, human eye is better than AI for foreseeable future. And certain things that, you as a human, you feel it as empathy. You can be augmented by a digital therapeutic that will help you sleep better, as an example, or address some of your non-acute and non-clinical depressive episodes, right? Or things like that. So that can be augmented and not prescribed but health scribed. And so we do see that part of that accountable wellness model are those digital therapeutics that are available and accessible to anyone at an affordable price.
Gotcha. Another tool in the toolbox. I mean, all these little tools, I think, are they need to come together at some point in some kind of platform, holistic sort of environment where, anybody that needs a certain solution can go and get it, and you have a coach to ask for information and to get you through that period, that episode that you're going through. This is the long-term vision: personalized precision care and holistic care, bringing in all the different aspects as well. Beautiful
I'll
stuff.
just remove the word care and just health. And I
Health.
know I'm being very
Stickler
adamant
on.
about this because, and the last thing on this, when Marina was going through breast cancer, she actually, and many don't, but she actually hated the word patient, because she said, well, cancer is just a slice of my life. It's not my life. And so I'm still an individual, and I have cancer today and I won't have it tomorrow. Right. And so I'm not a patient. So that's just, and that's why we're very stickler about, health care and the care part, and the word patient, we even call clients, not patients, on our platform. Right.
It's a good reminder for me as well. No, I really appreciate that point. Okay, Eugene, I know we're up on time here. I'll tell you what, everything you said, I learned a lot. I really love this conversation. I'd love to continue it, get an update a little bit later, and get into a couple of topics a little more deeply in the next conversation. So I'd love to have you and potentially even Marina come back at some point, talking about how the platform is growing, and any interesting trends you guys are seeing, and how patients and patients, how people and coaches are actually benefiting from using the actual platform. Thanks so much for your time today. I really enjoyed this, and I'd love to have you come back on.
Would be an honor and a pleasure. Thank you very much for the time.
Thanks so much, Eugene. Take care.